One of my favorite things to do is to help small business owners like yourself unlock one of the really cool things that you can do with your profit and loss statement that is going to help you grow your sales and to really understand your parts of your business and what are profitable and what aren't profitable. Hey, badass business owners, my name is Tammy and I'm here to help you grow your business, but more importantly, grow those profits. And part of growing those profits is even understanding what aspects of your business are helping you in this fight for profit. Because a lot of times we sell things or we have parts of our business that really don't quite pull their weight. We do them one day, we accidentally started doing them, or maybe we had this great idea it was going to be a huge part of our business. And for some of you, you think a piece of your business is doing really well. And the reality is it just isn't, but you just haven't had the data to show you what that is. So I want to go over the fact of how you can help yourself with this process. And the biggest thing you do is you use your profit and loss statement. Now, for some of you, you need to start using your profit and loss, period. And you need to get those caught up and you need to use it. But one of the functions that you can do is you can break down your sales. So for example, under your income piece on your profit and loss, why keep dumping everything into sales? Sales of product, sales of services, or just services. So many times when I'm coaching people or looking at picking up, doing their books for them, everything is dumped into one of these generic categories. And if you only do one thing and that's all you do, then you know what? Dumping them into one thing isn't so bad. However, for some of you, you only do one thing, but yet you have 3 different categories because all of your products go to different things. And that's a whole different problem. Because now you're separating out stuff that doesn't need to be separated. It all should be going into one area, and that needs to be cleaned up through your products. And a lot of times that's an issue between your invoices and the outside invoice system you're using and it importing into QuickBooks. And that's something that you can fix behind the scenes by going into products and services and reclassifying into the correct income category. Now, I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second, but that's usually why, if you've ever wondered why your sales are going into some into services, some into products, some into sales, it's just the way that they're set up behind the scenes in QuickBooks, and you can clean that all up. Now, if you only sell one thing, that's a good way to do it. But for some of you, you have anywhere from 2 to 4, 5 maybe different product lines that you have or services that you offer that you can actually break down and see how much they are doing in part of your business. So let's just say the most basic. You do residential stuff and you do commercial stuff. You can break down your sales into residential and you can break it down into commercial. This way you can see how much of your business is residential and how much of it is commercial. But for some of you, you have add-on services as well. I know roofers, for example, will do roofing, and sometimes they will do some stuff with solar. You can separate roofing. You can separate the solar piece of the business. Let's say you're an electrician and you specialize in one particular area of electrical, but you also want to kind of this new thing you want to try to do, you want to also capture that. So for example, I have some electricians, they do Christmas lights. It's not, necessarily a big chunk of their business, but it gets them through the winter months. And we can track how much they do every year in Christmas tree installs, Christmas light installs. And for some people, they do really good in that category because they charge thousands of dollars to do these full-on setups. It's a full-on thing. But for most electricians, they're just doing the basic stuff for everybody. And it's still, $300, $400, $500 a pop. But they add up and can lead to several $1,000s during those months. So once again, but you can pull it out of your business. You can take pretty much any business and break it down into several different categories. When I had my ice cream shop, for example, I made sure that my cups and cones, the basics, right, of just scoops, were one category, but the cakes that we sold were one category. We wanted the drinks as our own, sundaes, just so I could understand how much each piece was part of my business. So that way I knew not to spend a lot of time on something that maybe wasn't as profitable as something else. Which you might be asking, Tammy, that sounds great. I would love to be able to break my business out, but how do I know if it's profitable or it's not? Well, that's where you also want to look at your cost of goods, because you should also break down your cost of goods where you can into pockets. And I understand sometimes those cost of goods are going to go across different categories. For example, labor is very common. You're just going to have a labor part of your cost of goods, and they're going to, whether they're doing lights or Christmas lights or full-on electrical remodels, are going to be in all of them. For me, when it came to the ice cream shop, they were using the same labor across the board for all of those. So you're not necessarily going to have that piece, but the rest of your cost of goods, if you know what it's assigned to, then you can do that. So let's just say you have a retail shop and you have several different categories in your retail shop, and you have different vendors for the different types of categories. You can assign that vendor to that particular category that you want to track, and the other categories to those categories they want to track. So there is a way you can do it on the cost of goods. It's not as perfect because of the overlap, and sometimes it can take a little bit more breakdown, if you will, because you may have to split in QuickBooks. It's called splitting that cost of goods into the different categories. And then that way you can say, hey, this part of the bill goes over here. This part of the bill goes over here. This isn't a QuickBooks tutorial, so I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of that entire thing, but just know that it is possible. But really what my main thing I'm trying to get across today is take advantage of breaking down your sales into multiple categories so you can look at your business and say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that piece of my business did as much as it did. I've run into people just using that simple residential versus commercial. They're like, oh yeah, I do most of my businesses in commercial side and blah, blah, blah. And what happened is because the commercial ones are you typically more higher sales point, they thought they were doing more in that. But when the reality washed out, it was actually about 40% of their business. It wasn't even half when they looked at it. And I've had other things where they'll have it in, the same thing will happen. They'll swear it's one particular category and it turns out it's something different. Also, one of the reasons why it's so important is if your business is doing really well, because I'm a really big fan of you taking your numbers and comparing this year to last year, and then predicting for next year, right? You're going to use it as a series, both forward and backward, to kind of get an idea. And when I'm helping business owners whose sales have been kind of coming down, and we're like, hey, let's figure out where the bleeding's happening. Where are you losing? A lot of times they'll tell me one category where they think it's happening. And turns out it's something completely different. And it's being masked because your sales might be even, for example. So you might be doing like, you haven't really fallen behind, but you just got a feeling something's off. Well, I've done it to where some people are up in one category and way down in another category. So it shows a wash and they think that they're doing the same amount of sales they were doing and they can't understand why they're not growing. The reason you're not growing is all your new sales are offsetting the loss of sales in another category. So it's really important that when you're having these areas broken down in your business, you can actually use it to your advantage to see, is that category stagnant? Is it going down? Is it going up? And that way, if your sales look about the same, you're not going, I'm doing the same thing. When the reality is that's not what's happening behind the scenes in your business. And part of your business is bleeding and dying, and everything you're doing to net new is just offsetting the part of the loss. Sometimes that's on purpose, but in many cases, they did not mean for that to happen. I was helping another small business owner, and same thing. One category was growing really well, but another category had been slowly dying, and they had lost over $100,000 in that one category, and they didn't even realize it because they were so excited about the growth in another area. It didn't even dawn on them that they had a piece of their business that was dying. They thought it was down, but not to the degree that it was down. And sometimes that's intentional, but in this case, for example, it was not. So breaking down those sales can be very helpful. Now, word of caution, do not create 10 categories, 12 categories. Don't go crazy. All right. If you want to list them all out and then put them in buckets, okay? Because more than likely you can get everything into 4 to 5 buckets of sales. And then when you dive into that particular category, then you can kind of look at how you're doing in those subcategories, what's going on. But you want to pick at least, 3 to 5 for most of you. Sometimes it's 2. But I really want you to go out there and ask yourself, man, if I could have my sales broken down this way, I could really make an impact on my business. And I would love to be able to see how I did on that last year, how I'm doing it on this year, how I'm going to do it on the following year. And don't worry about the fact that you can't always go back and fix that. What you can do is start today, because starting today, you can start seeing that breakdown. And then as you start to comp on top of yourself, you can start comparing those numbers side by side. You may have to do it manually, the old-fashioned way, in the meantime. Now, for some of you, you can go back and you can make a change. There's a way that in QuickBooks, when you're updating the products and services to go into the correct categories, you can say, go back in the past, and every time I've used this particular name, send it back. But the biggest thing I can tell you to help you with this process, if you are using, whether it's QuickBooks invoices or anybody else's invoices, if you're using HubSpot, if you're using Jobber, if you're using a specific program for the type of business that you're using, and any of those, right now they're all not coming to my head, but if you're using any of those, you've got to get them correct in there first. Okay. So what you have to do is, it's a two-part process. The first part is you need to make sure that you have the right items that you're doing in your business, and it's all cleaned up in the program that you're using to write up your invoices today. Then when you connect it to QuickBooks, then you have to go into QuickBooks, and then underneath the products and services section under sales, when you click on it, when you say edit, on the right-hand side, it pops up and it'll say, what income category do you want this to go to? And that's where you're going to assign it to the new income category that you have set up. Now, prior to doing that part, you've got to go into your chart of accounts and create those different income boxes for your business, and then you can start putting them all in there. I know it sounds really confusing, but I promise you it's actually really easy, and maybe someday I'll do a tutorial on it. But once again, this isn't a QuickBooks kind of training or anything like that. But if you're using a bookkeeper, here's the good part. If you're using a bookkeeper, the bookkeeper can help with the QuickBooks portion of it. You're going to have to do your part, and you're going to have to make sure that everything is correct in your invoicing system. But then the bookkeeper can go ahead and create those income categories for you in your chart of accounts, and can help go into your products and services and assign them the correct way to the right categories. I'm telling you, it's a game changer. For those of you that have done it, you know what I'm talking about. The minute you start tracking your sales into those main categories of your business, and you can use that information year over year over year, it's amazing. It's mind-blowing how much it really does help you. And you find out that you've been spending all of your time. For example, here's another time profit part to it. Let's just say you're like, oh my God, I spend so much of my time dealing in this particular category, and yet I don't have a lot of sales in it. I don't make a lot of profit in it. Why am I even doing it? Right? You're spending your time in the wrong stuff. You know, there's so many times where something's like one and done. You get in, you get out. That's why you love those jobs, right? And I bet you should go look at it, and it's probably your bread and butter, and the one that's making you a lot of money, and you're doing a lot of sales, and the one that's sucking up all of your time, you're not making as much in. It could also be that it's a small category, but it's almost all of your headaches. If it's all of your headaches and it's a small sales category, get rid of it. Stop doing it. Who cares that someone else helps those people? Find somebody you want to refer them to. Say, go see Joey, go see Sally, let her do it for you, because it's a pain in the butt for you. Not only from that piece, it's lost profits of what you're getting, and it's taking up way too much of your time, and your sales are driven in other categories. Like I said, this is like a totally game changer in your business when you start tracking things and understanding how much of your time and effort is going into these different categories, and how much sales they're actually producing for you. You know, they could be things that you started doing and now you just don't want to start because people call you for it. I don't care if you lose 4 sales the entire year or 10 sales the entire year because you no longer offer it. It doesn't make you money. It causes you to go work on this one thing instead of working on the thing that is making you money. And at the end of the day, this is a profit game. It's not a sales game. Yes, you want sales, but you want the right sales, okay? And by breaking down those items and looking at it on your P&L and looking at how they did compared to the year before and the year coming up. And by the way, when you're planning out the next month, you go back and you go look at it and you go, oh, wow, look at the sales history of this particular category. This is what it looks like. Look at this one. It takes off in the next couple of months. I need to get prepared for that because we're about to go in season. There's so many different things that I could never cover on this particular podcast episode or video, whichever way you're watching. And it just is so much good information to help you run your business. And that's really what we want to do, right? We want to use the numbers to grow our sales, but more importantly, grow those profits. Start breaking down your sales. I promise you, it's going to make a huge difference in your business. It's going to be a game changer for you. All right. And with that, I'm out of here. I'll talk to you next time. Go drive some sales. Talk to you later. Bye.